This is John Bunn. He spent 27 years wrongfully convicted of murder.
I'm an innocent man, Your Honor, and I have always been an innocent man.
After being arrested at just 14 years old by NYPD Detective Louis Scarcella, John Bunn spent 16 years in prison and then 11 years on parole, during which he continued to fight for his innocence. Finally, his conviction was overturned due to Detective Scarcella's wrongdoing and the lack of probable cause for Bunn's arrest.
I want y'all to know that y'all convicted and had a wrong man in prison.
And after 27 years of fighting to clear his name, he is finally exonerated.
I want to thank you, Your Honor, because in 27 years, I've been fighting for my life.
Before leaving the courtroom, Bunn had a moment with the judge. Later, he filed a lawsuit against the city of New York and Detective Scarcella. This is Daniel Villegas, who was wrongfully convicted of a double homicide in El Paso, Texas, and spent 18 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. Villegas was only 16 when he was arrested, and he signed a false confession after being threatened with beatings and the death penalty by an El Paso detective. Despite trying to withdraw his confession shortly after signing it, Villegas was charged with 2 counts of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison based solely on the false confession. After a retrial and jury deadlock, Villegas was eventually found guilty and spent 18 years in prison before his conviction was overturned. Villegas remained out on bond, got married, and started a family, but is now in his 3rd trial seeking justice.
If the defendant will please stand.
This is the moment that Villegas will find out if he will be finally set free to reunite with his family or be forced to return to prison to serve the life sentence.
The State of Texas versus Daniel Villegas. Verdict Form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of... You are no longer under any conditions. You are free to leave. Thank you.
Reportedly, Villegas has filed a lawsuit against the city of El Paso. This is Ricky Jackson, a teenager who spent over 39 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. Jackson was arrested at 18 years old while living in Cleveland, Ohio. The main witness in the case was a 12-year-old kid named Eddie Vernon, who didn't see anything. He later revealed that he was coerced by the police to testify against Jackson, which led to his wrongful conviction. Initially sentenced to death, Jackson's sentence was later reduced to life in prison. Nearly 4 decades later, the now 52-year-old Eddie Vernon came forward with the truth that he never saw the murder happen. As a result, the charges against Jackson were dropped, and he was finally released from prison. This is the moment that Jackson hears he is free to go after being wrongfully imprisoned for almost 40 years.
Mr. Jackson, you're going to be free to go. Life is filled with small victories, and this is a big one. I wish you good luck. Thank you.
All right.
Jackson received $1 million in compensation from the state and an additional $2.65 million for lost income. This is Kristen Lobato, a teenage convict who was wrongfully convicted of murder and spent 16 years in prison. At the age of 18, she was charged with the murder of a homeless man in Las Vegas and was initially convicted on first-degree murder. However, after a retrial, she was convicted of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 13 to 45 years in prison. It was only after a new hearing and the presentation of evidence that proved her innocence that Lobato was finally released from prison. This is the moment when Lobato stepped outside for the first time as a free woman, finally cleared of the wrongful conviction that kept her behind bars for so many years.
I feel overwhelmed, I feel excited, I feel grateful, I'm so happy.
As a result of her wrongful conviction, Lobato has filed a lawsuit against the Las Vegas Police Department, and her compensation claim is still pending. This is Robert Springsteen, who spent 9 years in prison and was sentenced to death for crimes he allegedly did not commit. In Austin, Texas, Springsteen was 17 at the time, and 3 friends were believed to be prime suspects in the killings of 4 teenage girls at a yogurt shop. One of the boys was caught carrying a .22 caliber gun at the mall, as it was the same weapon used in the killings. The boys were set free after no link was found. But 7 years later, one of his friends was interrogated and began to give up information, saying that the .22 caliber gun used to belong to Springsteen. Springsteen's conviction was later overturned based on an unfair trial. While waiting for a retrial, lawyers requested further DNA evidence to be analyzed from the original crime scene, even though it had been 17 years. The analysis concluded that no DNA was found of Springsteen and his 3 friends. Now Springsteen is back in court.
This is one of the most significant things that ever happened in your life. That's what I keep trying to explain to you. If I was there and I partook in this, I would remember these things. And you do remember these things. No, I don't.
This is Robert Springsteen, who spent 9 years in prison and was sentenced to death for crimes he allegedly did not commit. In Austin, Texas, Springsteen was 17 at the time and one of the prime suspects in the killings of 4 teenage girls at a yogurt shop. His conviction was later overturned based on an unfair trial. While waiting for a retrial, further DNA evidence was requested and analyzed from the original crime scene, which concluded that no DNA was found of Springsteen and his 3 friends. Now, Springsteen has been exonerated and set free.
Second defendant, Robert Springsteen's case is being called this afternoon. Additionally, 4 pending capital murder indictments.
And all charges are now dismissed.
Courthouse have signed these dismissals in each of the causes against these 2 defendants, Michael Scott and Robert Springsteen.
This is the moment Springsteen is declared a free man after 9 years in prison. However, since his overturned conviction was not granted based on actual innocence, he is not eligible for a payout. This is Devont Stanford, a teenager who was wrongfully convicted of a horrific quadruple murder in 2007. He was only 14 years old at the time and was walking outside of his home. He was only 14 years old at the time and was walking outside his home in his pajamas when he was arrested just 3 blocks away from the crime scene, which involved 4 people and an AK-47 assault rifle. At the local police station, the police coerced him into a false confession by using leading questions and feeding him facts from the case. Adding to his unfair treatment, his lawyer at the time convinced him to enter a guilty plea. This is Devont Stanford, who in 2007 was sentenced to 37 to 90 years in prison for a horrific quadruple murder that he did not commit. He was only 14 years old at the time, walking outside his home in his pajamas when he was arrested just 3 blocks away from a vicious crime scene involving 4 people and an AK-47 assault rifle. The police coerced him into a false confession with leading questions and feeding him facts from the case. His lawyer at the time didn't help by convincing him to enter a guilty plea. According to his current lawyer, in the course of their targeting him, they literally fabricated evidence and committed perjury in order to ensure that this young man that they could get a conviction. Just 3 weeks later, hitman Vincent Smothers was arrested for 12 murders, 4 of which turned out to be the case that Stanford was convicted for. The lack of action from the justice courts got the attention of the Northwestern Center of Wrongfully Convicted Youths, who pushed to reopen the case that led to Devont's freedom in 2016. Interestingly enough, Devont is thankful to one particular person for his freedom, Smothers.
He protected me, not the cops. The cops took advantage of me. It's because of this man. You know, I'm able to walk and breathe and just, be at peace.
As a result of his wrongful imprisonment, Stanford may have struggled to reintegrate into society. In 2018, he was arrested for assault, but this time he did not have the protection of a hitman to take the blame.